right now on CBSSports.com, you will find my latest NBA mock draft. Here are my top 10 picks. Alex Sarr, he's going number 1 to Atlanta. I've got Donovan Clingan at number 2 to Washington. Zachary Risacher at 3. Reed Shepard, 4 to the Spurs. Matas Buzelis, Stephon Castle, Dalton Knecht, Tidjon Saloon, Ron Holland, and Cody Williams. All right, now, in previous episodes of this show, as well as on the Ion College Basketball YouTube page, we have broken down these players. Instead, today, we're going to talk about the intel that helped shape that mock draft, because that's what that mock draft is based on. Let's start with the top overall prospect, at least from Vegas's standpoint, in terms of betting favorite to go number 1, and that's Alex Sarr. Here's what my expectation is for Alex Sarr as it stands today, 15 days before the draft. I think Sarr goes either 1 or 2. I think Atlanta has a real dilemma on their hands. They're going back and forth, not just with Sarr and Risacher, but they've had Clingan in. They're going to have some other guys in. If Atlanta doesn't take Sarr at number 1, I expect Washington will take him at number 2. So I believe he only has 2 landing spots. That's Alex Sarr, the betting favorite to go number 1 in the draft right now, according to Vegas. After Sarr, let's talk about another Frenchman, Zachary Risacher. Now, his range is a little wider than Sarr's. He, too, is in the mix at number 1. I think he's very, very possible he goes to Atlanta with that top overall pick. But if Atlanta goes with Sarr, what happens to Risacher? Well, it gets a little complicated because while many people have him slotted as a top 2 talent on the board, Washington, they drafted a young wing last year in Bilal Coulibaly. They have Deni Avdija, who made huge strides last year and is still in his early 20s. Then on top of that, you have Corey Kispert, who's playing really well too. Those are arguably the only 3 players you want to keep in Washington, and they all play on the wing. So did they take Risacher or did they take Clingan? That is why I mocked Clingan number 2 to Washington. All right, so what happens to Risacher if Clingan goes number 2? He could slip to Houston. Does Houston take him? They have a huge assortment of young wings too. I think Houston is a very possible trade option, especially if Risacher should slip to 3. That will increase the suitors for that pick at 3, so that's something to watch. All right, now let's talk about Donovan Clingan. As I mentioned before, he had a workout in Atlanta, allegedly a very impressive workout. That has fueled some rumors on social media that Atlanta could be looking to trade down in the draft and potentially get Clingan a little later in the lottery, a la what Boston did a few years back with Jason Tatum, even what Indiana did last year with Jarris Walker. They get the guy they want and they pick up another asset in the process. But that is probably not the most likely destination. Washington is where I currently have him mocked, and as I explained, that could come down to him and Risacher. If Sarr is on the board at 2, Washington, I think, will take Sarr. What happens if Clingan doesn't go 1 or 2? I do not expect Clingan to go to San Antonio at 3. I'm sorry, San Antonio at 4. I do not expect them to go to Houston at 3. I don't expect him to go to Charlotte at 6. So in my opinion, if Clingan doesn't go 1 or 2, I think you're going to see him potentially fall a little bit. I think Detroit, although it's counterintuitive with Jalen Duren there, could be a sneaky option, but I do not expect him to get past 7 with Portland. So it's interesting. You have a guy who's working out for Atlanta, the team with the number 1 pick in the draft, but could potentially slip all the way to 7 because of the fact that 3 of those teams already have their long-term centers. All right, those are the top 3 prospects on my board. Number 4, Reed Shepard. Who likes Reed Shepard right now? You're hearing a lot about the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets, who have the 3rd overall pick. You're hearing a lot of Reed Shepard hype right now. But again, I think Houston is listening to offers for that 3rd pick. And if Risacher is available, it'll increase the demand. I do not expect them to take Clingan. So if Sarr and Risacher are off the board, I think it's very possible that Reed Shepard is the pick. But I also think that this could be moved in a trade. If Houston doesn't take him at 3, you're hearing that San Antonio likes both Reed Shepard and Stephon Castle. That's something that their front office is reportedly contemplating in what would be 2 very different types of perimeter players to surround Victor Wembanyama with. All right, the last player that we're going to talk about is Matas Buzelis. Now, this is what's interesting because Buzelis is someone right now that the entire draft community, myself included, is mocking to Detroit. Okay, everybody thinks Detroit's going to take him, and it makes sense because they've got a hole at that 4 spot, and he would fit nicely with their collection of young players. But to me, when everybody is thinking the same thing, it's an indication that something different is going to happen, and we're all just subscribing to groupthink. Remember, Trajan Langdon, he's in charge over there in Detroit right now, and we don't know what his draft history is. He's coming from Atlanta, but now the final decision is his. So while Buzelis may make some sense on the current roster, we don't know if Langdon likes that roster, if he's going to move off those guys. This could be something totally unexpected. So right now I have Buzelis locked in there. But this is one of the points in the draft at number 5 where I think things could really get interesting because you could get an unexpected variable that could shift the rest of the lottery. Again, my latest mock draft is available right now, cbssports.com, and it's based on all these hypothetical variables and the scenarios they could create. So you can visit cbssports.com to check that out, and for all the latest leading up to the draft on June 26th and 27th, and also for those player breakdowns, make sure you visit the Eye on College Basketball YouTube page and podcast link.